So yes, thank you for joining me today, Steve. As we discussed a little bit already, the purpose of our meeting is to talk through your career, the day-to-day life of being a commissioning engineer, types of projects you've worked on, and any interesting stories along the way, advice you would give to people who might just be starting out and going in the same direction you've been in. And then finally, we'll ask about your views on hiring processes and interview stages and what you feel is effective in a company understanding who you are. So to begin, please, Steve, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit how you started your career to where you are today.
Okay, so my name's Steve White. Currently a commissioning engineer. I started my life career as in the RAF, Royal Air Force, as a telecommunications engineer. The reason why I joined the RAF, complete blind panic, came out of university with a lot of debt, did sound engineering. The career prospects within that sort of industry were very, very small, shall we say. It was basically you got to make cups of coffee for the next 5 years before you can get anywhere. So yeah,
Yeah.
I joined the RAF as a telecommunications engineer. But certainly a eye opener into starting a career. Very the work was incredibly difficult, but it was one of those ones where everyone's in the same boat. It was very much a work hard, play hard kind of situation. I've done tours of Afghanistan where you sat in the desert Christmas Day, just wondering about your life choices. But it is one of the best decisions I ever made because I wouldn't be where I am today without having that sort of grounding and that sort of regimental kind of approach to work where, you know, future employers will see, armed forces on your CV and they'll know you'll get up in the morning, you'll be smartly dressed or you'll be dressed accordingly. You won't
Mhm.
shy away from, when things get hard, you'll just get stuck in and, you're a
Yeah.
team player. That's the sort of thing that they sort of teach you in the armed forces. So,
Hmm.
met my wife in the armed forces. She was also deployable. So we
Nice.
didn't really sort of see a lot of each other for the first year of marriage.
Mm.
Then we had our first child, Evan. And of course, with being deployable, kind of thought, well, it's not really going to beat work raising a child with both of us away. So
Yeah.
I left the armed forces and managed to secure a position as instrumentation technician on a oil refinery at Valero, Pembroke.
Nice.
This was a what they called an improver's position because of my past experience in the armed forces. They took me on as basically instrument technician's mate um, with the proviso of working towards being a fully qualified instrument tech. Um, and after about 6 months, managed to qualify as an instrument tech, and then worked instrumentation, which for anyone listening is sort of things like pressures, levels, temperatures. Around the oil refinery, very important because all the processes run off these sort of readings, shall we say, that, are we making things too hot? Are we making things too cold? Have we got too much pressure, not enough pressure? So there's a lot
Hmm.
of intricacies within instrumentation that you sort of don't see. It's all well and good working on a pressure transmitter, but it's what that feeds, what that shuts down, there's a lot of safety systems involved with them. So, that was good. I moved on from there then to become a analyzer technician. So working with oxygen measurements, continuous emissions monitoring. So looking at sort of what they call CO2 bubbles and the pollution that these places put out, and making sure that it's within their allocated um, CO2 range, that their NOx range, that they're only allowed to put out so much per year, and they have to have equipment there that monitors it. Became very good with gas chromatographs,
Nice.
which a very complex bit of kit. They're basically like little oil refineries in a little box, and they sort of separate things out, and they measure quantities and make sure they're getting the best out of whatever they're doing. So in the in the oil and gas, sort of making sure that they're getting the most out of the crude oil that they're putting into the process. From there, because I was only contracting, I got a position with a company called ABB,
Yes,
where
tell us.
I was I started with emissions monitoring, so the SEMS, continuous emissions monitoring, across various sites across the UK, and then moved into their gas chromatograph team, and was working across the UK and abroad, commissioning gas chromatographs, servicing gas chromatographs everywhere. Really interesting job. Um, just very, 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 very intense. So, I'd be in Norway for, 6 weeks. I'd come back from Norway for a
Yeah,
day, and
sorry
then
to interrupt you, Steve. Just to ask you, just while you're on that topic, the gas corrector, it's hard to say,
chromatographs.
chromographs,
Yeah.
and the emission systems that you worked on ABB. Can you just elaborate a little bit? What does it look like a successful, when you're called out to these types of projects or these servicing, what does it look like? Tell us what you actually see and do in this position
Yeah.
for someone who
So,
doesn't know at all, you know.
yeah. So um, for example, we'll go through emissions monitoring, because that's a massive sector at the moment, and will continue to be a massive sector way into the future,
Hmm.
because global warming is a massive thing, and everybody wants to keep these emissions to their minimum. So large companies like oil refineries, gas plants, and places like this have to monitor what they're putting into the atmosphere to make sure
Right.
that they're within the limits that the HSE set them. But on the flip side of the coin, they have to put this equipment in. But if they monitor this equipment, it's quite easy to fudge, shall we say, their readings. So it looks like they're putting out less than what they are
Right.
putting out. So what these companies actually have to do is on a six monthly rotation is bring in a third party. So, for example, ABB. There's a lot of other companies. SICK is another company. There's a lot of these companies that come in, and what we have to do for a service engineer is what we call linearize these readings. So, for example, with CO2, the response these instruments give might not be a linear response through the scale. From 0 to whatever they're reading. So say 50 ppm, 100 ppm they're
Hmm.
reading. It might not be um, a linear response to it. So we have to then, what we do is we have what they call a gas divider, and we put in set quantities from their 0 to 100%, set quantities of this gas through the analyzer to make sure that at 20% CO2, the analyzer's reading 20% CO2. So these are specifically
Nice.
calibrated instruments that will
Mm.
put that specific gas in to only look at that um, one gas to
Yeah,
say
so
that,
you can
okay,
run your own test with
yeah.
your everything
So
basically perfect environment.
we're
Yeah,
basically validating that, at a 20% concentration of your scale, we're putting in 20%, your scale, and the analyzer is reading 20%. I mean, it's very
nice.
fine margins. I think it was like 0.03% discrepancy we were allowed. So, but
Wow, yeah.
that would have to be done for every gas. So you can imagine. I think So Valero, for example, had I think it was 7 emissions monitoring stations on different stacks. So each one of these 7 stations would have anything up to 7, 8 gases that it was monitoring, and each one of those 7 or 8 gases had to be validated to make sure it was reading correctly. So you go to this place for a service. The service would take 5 days to 10, no, 2 weeks, and you'd just be
Mm.
working your way around each individual SEMS house, calibrating each one of these gases, filling it in on a big report, because then their environmental, whoever was head of their environmental would have to have a copy of this report, go through it and make sure the analyzer is within spec, and also report that to the HSE to confirm with them that a third party has come in and they agree that the analyzer is on spec.
Right, I see. It's very involved with lots of different
Yeah,
things running at the same time. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
So
impressive.
in terms of as a service engineer, things that you look at are things like, where am I going to inject this gas? There's specific places that they want you to inject this gas. Ideally, you want to, a closest representative as possible. So you try and go in where the gas has been extracted. So
Right.
sometimes you might be down in a cab, you might have 150 meters up a stack where their probe is. So you're pushing the gas up 150 meters to the probe where they're taking the gas, and then it's
Hmm.
being pulled back down through the analyzers. So you're looking at sort of things like response times and stuff like that. So how
Hmm.
long is it taking for the analyzer to respond? Because there's many things that can be involved that can cause problems. So if the response
Yeah,
time is
it's
slow,
I get it. It's like you're constantly troubleshooting to tackling, eliminating one at a time
yeah,
problem what it could be.
yeah,
It's not that, let's try this. It's not that until you get to where
yeah.
something is an issue and you can work on it then. It's like
So
having a
for
patient that can't talk back to you, isn't it?
exactly. So for
Yeah.
example, you're injecting these gases and the response time is very slow. You then have to go and work out, why is this response time slow? Have I got a leak in my hose somewhere that the gas that you're pushing the gas in with, that you're
Mm.
bringing in atmospheric, and that's reducing the response time? Is there a pump involved? Is the pump not working correctly? I mean, we had major problems with they're called peristaltic pumps. So it's like a
Okay.
soft piece of rubber
Mm.
and around a hard case, and then there's two rollers that roll round the soft piece of rubber, which pull the gas down. So it's just
Right.
constantly going round and round and round and just pulling this gas down. Well, at one
Mm.
point we discovered that the hard bit of plastic around the outside that it crimps it against to push it round
Mm.
was not perishing, but being flexed too much over time, because you think these are running 24/7, 7 days a week,
Yeah.
was being flexed too much over time. So it wasn't pinching the tube properly enough. So it was actually bringing in atmospheric air or not pulling down correctly. So you'd find it would come down and then it shoot back up when it was
Ah,
an open path, if you get what I mean. And just things like that. It was always there was always a problem that you'd have to go and find, and then sometimes you find it quickly. Sometimes you get to an end of a test and
yeah.
you're like, no, it
Tell
hasn't
me,
worked.
what is
What's
the
wrong?
feeling, Steve? It must be a nice feeling when you find and you know you've got the problem
Oh,
nailed on.
it's brilliant. There's
Yeah.
nothing. It's a great feeling when you know you've gone through all the test gases, everything's gone in, you've typed it into your spreadsheet, you typed all the results in, and it gives you just this little screen on the end, pass, and you're like, great,
Yeah. Big
I'm
green.
happy, customers happy. That's a big thing with servicing and commissioning, is trying to get involved with that customer, trying to have that relationship with the customer that it's passed, let's high five, let's go, great, lovely. But also on the flip side of that, it's not passed, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
We need to find the problem. The customer's never going to like hearing that, but having that relationship, that when you tell them that it's not a, oh my god, you're useless type, it's trying to get them to not be disappointed in you and the company, but
Yeah.
trying to sort of see it as a positive, and getting out there and fixing it, sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. So just on that, Steve, because I think this is a really interesting part of what you do. When you do land on a new project, let's say you're working for a company, you've just joined, and you're thrown in the deep end. You're sent out to a position that is an industry that's sort of familiar to you, because I know as a commission engineer, you guys can work, you can adapt to most industries anyway. But say you land on a site and then you're fault finding, as we've discussed. What do you think's most important for what you would recommend for maybe a younger person stepping in when they get put into that position for the first time? What advice would you give? Not just, I mean, job wise, but as a soft skill, like a personal trait. What advice do you think someone should have in mind when they land in that position?
So first of all, my biggest recommendation for anybody coming into commissioning engineer role is know your principles. So your baseline principles. So things like VIR triangles, Wheatstone bridge. These are all sort of electronic principles that underpin everything. So
Right,
with those principles, if you go into any industry, they all use the same principles to work.
right.
And knowing those means you can strip everything else back and look at the basics of that electronics and find out why isn't it working. If you get what I mean, because those basic fundamentals, you can then
Hmm.
build on that to build the big picture of why something is working. But with soft skills, first of all is you get to a site for the first time, introduce yourself, you know, be friendly, be approachable, explain to the customer what you're going to be doing, invite the customer in to see what you're doing so they can watch and see what you're doing. It's having that two-way conversation with them to,
Yeah. I
is there
think that's a
anything?
lovely point, what you just made there. Sorry to speak over you. There's a
No,
slight delay in our call. The signal's a little bit poor, but yeah, I think it's a lovely point what you said about inviting the customer to watch what you're doing. I think that's a nice way. I think anyone or any client would appreciate the at least the offer, and to show
yeah,
instill confidence and peace of mind in them to show and
yeah.
talk them through what you're doing. That's a lovely way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm awful for it. I always like first day. I like to turn up with a tray of donuts.
Yes.
It
Great
it
shout.
sounds real. It's
Yeah.
a it's a £5 from Asda's tray of just simple donuts.
Yeah, nice.
You walk into the workshop. You've got all the other technicians there who work there 24/7. 5
Yeah.
days a week, sort of thing. Yeah, my
Mm.
name's Steve. I'm your commissioning engineer, service engineer. I've come from here. I just bought you some donuts just to break the ice a bit. It's
Yeah,
when they
that's
were saying this
lovely.
to me, and it goes a long way. It sounds really stupid, but it goes a long way. Just sort of, anyone got a spare, you're missing a fitting, for example, a special, because a lot
Yeah.
of these hoses have different sort of fittings on the end and stuff. You're missing a fitting.
And if
I'll
someone
tell you.
says no, do you say to them, "Did you enjoy that jam donut?"
Well, exactly, exactly. But even that little thing,
That's
anyone got
lovely.
this fitting I could
Yeah.
borrow?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are like, you brought in the donuts. Yeah, go find you that fitting,
Yeah.
no problem.
That's a great
It's just
idea. I think it's actions speak louder than words. It shows
yeah,
to who you are when you turn up. You're a friendly person who's here to help, and
yeah.
you understand you're in their house really, when you turn up on site. Good guys that are there all the time. So
So
yeah.
for example, for that, I've just come off a project down in Plymouth, and we were the principal contractors. We had another company who was subcontracted to us. Once a week, I'd bring in a tray of donuts. I was the only guy from the company I was working for that brought in a tray of donuts for these boys once a week.
Mm,
But even the boys who were working with me for the company I was working for noticed that these boys would go above and beyond to do things for me.
that's
But
lovely.
whereas if anybody else asked them, there was a bit of oh yeah, all right, we'll do it for you. Oh, Steve, yeah, no worries, we'll get that done for you.
Yeah.
It's just that little gesture that doesn't cost you a lot. That
Mm. It's the
just
thought that counts. It's nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
Mm.
just sort of it
Yeah.
just sort of builds those bridges with them, if you get what I mean.
100%. I like that, and no one's mentioned that yet as a point. And what a great way to go into anywhere in the
Yeah.
world. A donut is acceptable, you know.
Well,
So
exactly, isn't it?
maybe not a dentist though, but yeah, you've
But
been there
it's
this morning, I
just,
think, haven't you? Yeah,
yeah, the donuts isn't really sort of, yeah, it doesn't
yeah, I
really
get it.
represent what I'm on about.
Mm.
It's that
The
breaking the ice.
gesture,
It's
yeah.
just that getting, I'm here to help. I'm here to get a job done.
Mm.
We're all here to get a job done. We're all in the same boat. Here's some donuts.
Yeah, nice, nice. In regards to taking your experience into other projects, different industries, I want to ask what your most memorable project is in your mind when you think of like a point in your career, maybe you're most proud of, or the most difficult or rewarding project, which we'll come on to next. So just keep that in mind. But first of all, I just wanted to ask, is there anything that's changed over, I know you've been in the industry a long time, so say the last 20 years, from when you was first a commissioned engineer to now? Is there anything where, like, there's a point of detail or attention you focus on more these days than you used to, or is there something that has maybe developed and has proven to be very important to you?
One thing that I've certainly noticed over the years is diversifying. So as a commissioning engineer before, you'd go into a job to commission instrumentation, for example,
Hmm.
the pressures, the levels, the temperatures. Now you go into a job to commission instrumentation, you'd be looking at, your original sort of pressures, levels, temperatures, your PLC logic, your SCADA, there's a wider range that people
Okay.
require you to cover. So not just what you're responsible for. And
Mm.
that's one thing I love about the job is the fact that you're not doing the same thing on repeat for different things
Yeah.
these days. You're having to do as many different things as possible. And I mean, one of the greatest things I've always loved doing is, I stick my hand up for anything. Oh, can anyone have a look at this? Yeah, I'll go have a look at it. Um, you'd be putting pumps in, putting gas detection in, whereas before you'd have a specialist guy come in to do it. You could be putting
Okay, I
that
see.
in, and
Yeah.
you just get your hands dirty and get in there is what my
It
philosophy
keeps a
is.
variety as well, doesn't it? So I
And
suppose
yeah,
over the years, there's more things going on at once than just a
yeah,
single.
and then
Yeah.
with that skills, you can then develop it. You can say, look, I've put in gas detection to your employer. I put in gas detection. Yes, the guy came in to commission it after me because he was a specialist, but I've put it all in. Why don't you send me on the gas detection course so I can then commission gas detection as well?
Yeah.
That's the sort of you when you go into these things, you want to try and build your skills up. So although you've got the certain skills that they've had to employ you as a commissioning engineer,
Mm.
never sit back and go, okay, I've got my skills as a commissioning engineer. I don't need to do
Yeah.
anything else. I'm
Be
quite happy
open
here.
to it. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
constantly
Nice.
build, constantly, even if someone's commissioning something else there, oh, what are you doing? How are you doing that? What's the process of commissioning it? How does it work? Trying
Mm.
to find out as much as possible about as many different things as possible will only help your career and only develop you as an employable person to basically diversify. You don't have to
Mm.
pigeonhole yourself into a certain part of commissioning. You can then,
Mm.
you can be the wider range of commissioning, and that leads on to bigger and better things like running, being a project manager because you've got all these skills that you can bring in.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know,
Yeah.
I can commission instrumentation, I can commission gas detection. Oh, you can do the whole thing. So why didn't you do the project managing? Because you know about
You
everything.
become a more well-rounded
Yeah,
individual, don't you? Yeah.
yeah.
Steve, I'm really sorry to do this. I've got a meeting that started, which actually started 1 minute ago. I am terribly sorry because
No
I've
worries.
planned for us to start early. Can we continue this conversation whenever suits you? I really am.
Yeah.
I'm so invested in this meeting. I'm really enjoying it. Do you mind if we continue it
No,
either
not at
later
all.
today or maybe
Yeah,
Monday,
not at
if
all.
that's
Just
okay?
just give us a shout.
All right then.
Drop us an email and I'll jump back on.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. I am sorry about
No,
this.
that's
It's
fine.
quite an important one. Okay, Steve. So to continue, what's the coolest project you've worked on?
So probably the coolest project has to be I worked out in Hammerfest in Norway on
Okay.
a oil refinery. This oil refinery well, was built out at sea basically. So it was built so that it was below sea level on its own island, but the island was built for the refinery. So it was something else. You go
Right.
literally through a tunnel under the sea to get to the refinery, and it was just
Wow.
I was commissioning a GC there, but the whole ethos of the Norwegian oil and gas industry is something else. You know, it's very much they try to hide everything so it has as little impact on the environment and on the people around it and of um, the scenery that Norway has as possible. So their drilling platforms are actually all submersible, so they're literally like spiders crawling across the sea floor with
Yeah.
a ship that comes along the top, takes the crude oil from beneath the sea, pumps it out onto another ship, and then that ship goes off down the fjords. So it's something else to just actually see, if you get what I mean. Just experience it was just
Amazing.
absolutely amazing.
And that tunnel to get there sounds interesting too. How does that
Yeah,
work? Are you on are you driving on a train on a what is
no,
it?
so a minibus picks you up from basically the site entrance, which is before the tunnel to the refinery, and then that
Yeah.
minibus drives you then through the tunnel actually onto site.
Wow, that's incredible. And how did you get your job there, Steve? How did that come about?
So that was with ABB,
Oh,
and
okay, right, yeah.
so that they'd spec for a new gas chromatograph out there, and they sent me out because Norway didn't have a representative or a service engineer for gas chromatography out there. So they sent me out along with the sales guy to try and sort of bridge relationships and sort of commission some gas chromatographs with them and sort of just showcase what ABB could do for them.
I
And that's
see.
another big
Okay.
part. That's another big part of the commissioning role is a lot of people see it as just putting this new equipment in for people, and it's working. Thank you very much. But the big part of it is actually trying to not generate, but build these relationships with these companies to when they want something upgrading, when their piece of equipment has gone obsolete, to basically reach
Mm,
out to reliable known companies that they work with already to go, right, well, what can you provide us with, if you get what I mean? And you try and build
right.
those relationships from the start to to basically generate and give value to the company that you're working for.
Yeah, I get it. And it's also nice for the company to have a contact like you, for example, that they could potentially message directly and say, "Look, Steve, our
Yeah,
system is experiencing this problem. Could you give us any quick advice?" Rather than
yeah,
maybe going through the rigmarole of going through, phone call, hanging on, please click option one, get through to this manager and emails,
yeah,
and maybe it takes too long. Like you say, establishing that point of contact when you get on site and being an easy
yeah.
person sometimes to reach can have its benefits and its drawbacks, I'm sure, when you're on holiday and you're
Well,
getting
it does have
messages.
its drawbacks. So
Yeah.
I'll go on to a different story. I worked for I don't know whether I can mention companies or not. So I worked for a company, should I say? And
I can take the name out. Yeah.
brilliant. So they had,
Yeah.
I think it was 130, 140 biogas plants across the UK.
Wow.
Um, and, I like to think of myself as being very approachable. Um, so sort of whenever anything went wrong with these sites, a lot of the companies or a lot of the guys who were operating these sites First port of call, who's the last service engineer here? Ah, Steve. Steve, I've got this problem, you know, but it
Yeah.
ended up, you know, I was getting 10, 11 calls a day throughout the night. You know, we've gone off
Wow.
work. What can we do? You know, what should I check before I ring the on-call people? What can I do? Um,
Right.
and you know, it's great. I don't mind it, and I like that feeling of being that person that can help. If you get what I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I like the thought of that. If I can't do it, let's give Steve a ring. He might be able to help me, sort of thing. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Do you know,
I
it's
like to
funny
be
you
that.
mentioned that. Just quickly, yeah, I spoke with a guy, a American guy called Gerald. He's one of the videos. He's also a similar. He's a commissioning automation engineer, and he says his words were, "I like being Superman. When there's a problem, they call me and I come and fix it." And I understand
Yeah,
the same feeling you have as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
that's cool.
it's a nice feeling being that one person that sort of goes, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll call Steve. He'll know. You know,
Yeah,
my service engineer that I've got a relationship with, he'll know how to fix it and he can guide me. You know, it's that
yeah,
that's a
nice.
really nice feeling to have.
Yeah, wicked. You're their only port of call, so it's a nice position to be in. I understand.
Yeah.
Just for sort of our own research, just want to talk to you a little bit about hiring experiences. Has there ever been an interview process that I know it might be quite a boring subject, really, but when you go and you join companies, I know you've worked with quite a few different companies over the years and across different industries. Has there been an interview process that has been made surprisingly fast or good, or an interview process that has stuck out in your mind as where you felt that was really good and I enjoyed meeting that team?
Um, yeah, I mean, I enjoy always meeting new people, and I like
Nice.
my outlook on interviews is very different to a lot. I think a lot of people, you know, going into an interview, it's not so much the company interviewing me to see whether they want to employ me, but it's also the flip side of that is, do I actually want to work for this company? You know,
Yeah.
trying to flip that interview around on itself so that you end up sort of almost interviewing the company to see, are you the right fit for me? Do I want to work for
Mhm.
you? Then sort of switches your mindset. Suddenly the nerves go because the pressure's on them, if you get what I mean,
Right.
to impress you to work for them, if you get what I mean. But I've had
Yes,
some
it's a nice
great
way to look at it.
experiences with
Yeah.
interviews. Yeah, I've had some great experiences with interviews and sort of meeting new people. I've also had some awful experiences with interviews, and um, one of my biggest bugbears is speed. You know, when you go for an interview, um, you know, they're all really positive. They're really sort of like, yeah, you know, you're brilliant, yeah. And then it's 2 weeks down the line, and you've had zero feedback, zero nothing, you know, nothing back from them, and it's just sort
Yeah.
of dragging on. And at that point, as somebody who's looking for employment, you tend to go, oh, obviously I'm not successful. I'm going to go somewhere else. And you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you keep looking, and then sort of
Yeah.
2 months down the line, you suddenly get a phone call back. Oh, we really liked you in an interview. We were wondering whether you wanted to start for us or not. And well, it's too late now. I've sort of taken on another role.
Yeah, that is a real
And that,
problem in the recruitment world. And us as recruitment agents, we get caught in the middle sometimes because we're waiting on feedback from the client who hasn't given
yeah,
it, and we chase it. And the candidate we know is waiting. So I see that a lot. It is frustrating. And we're
yeah,
actually trying to fix that by taking the hiring process from the client, conducting it for them, and sending it as a video.
yeah,
Although it could still happen because we could still wait for feedback. But our idea is that
yeah,
they can watch the hiring process, all the whole team can view it in their own time quite easily. The reason for this is that the processes are staggered too long, so we want to help speed the process up to
yeah,
avoid that issue from arising.
yeah.
But tell me, Steve, have you been on the other side? Have you been on where you're interviewing someone to join your team?
Um, to be honest, I haven't done a lot of it. I've done one or two, um,
Okay.
and to be honest, like my main focus with interviewing would be um, the fit for the team, because you can always bring on. experience, if you get what I mean, as in you can bring their
Yeah.
experience up to speed. You can teach that, but if they're a
Hmm.
bad fit for the team, you can't change that. You
Right.
if someone's a very negative person coming into a positive team, that can bring the whole team down. So
Mm.
whenever I've gone through the interview process, interviewing someone, it's always been, how will they fit into the team rather than what is their actual, what's their ability. Because at the end of the day, you can bring that ability up as long as they've got that baseline knowledge there. That experience will come with time, but
Yeah.
you can't change their personality to fit that team, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's true. And like you said, you can do more damage than good if you rush a hire with
Yeah,
the right skill set, but maybe the wrong
yeah,
attitude, it could affect the whole
yeah.
team. I
And it
understand.
just brings the whole team
Yeah, that's
down.
a good point.
Not necessarily right down, but it's sort of like, it brings
Yeah.
the team down. Hopefully, it'll bring them up, but you're not at the level where you want to be. You want that real positive team. You want that team to go, yes, we can do this.
Yeah.
My wife hates me for it. I'm very much a yes man. You ask me to do anything, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do anything, no bother. And
Again, that can
you,
work in her favour too, though, as well. But
well,
both
yeah,
sides, I suppose, you get pulled away as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So having that positiveness in that team is, I think, an actual, a real vital part of working in a team, and having that
Yeah,
positive attitude towards
definitely.
everything.
There's nothing more important than the team, I think. And also, you've got
Yeah,
to enjoy your work. So being around people that you enjoy being around is, is
that makes
part
it a
of
hell of a lot
hopefully
easier.
having a
You don't have,
happier life. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's a lot easier to get
definitely.
home from
Okay.
work when you enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. And tell me, coming away from the discussion of hiring to move to sort of advice and reflection. So, has there ever been advice that you've received that has stuck with you?
So, actually, this wasn't. It's only a few years ago. Someone gave me this advice going into an interview. Um, was something called STAR. I'm sure as a you would know this. So the STAR acronym. So
Yeah,
when you get into an interview, try and relate it back to all your experiences. It's a lot easier for someone hiring you if you can relate it to something. So STAR is, now I've got to remember it now, situation,
yeah.
task, actions,
Action.
and your
Yeah.
review. Okay,
And
so
result. Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's yeah. If they're if someone's asking you a question, like try and remember that, and sort of have situations that you've actually been in that you can relate it to. One, because it makes answering the question a lot more fluid because you're running through that process you've already done in your head, going, then I did this, then I did that. But then it also proves to the person who's interviewing you, you know what you're talking about because you're actually relating it to a physical thing you've done.
Yeah, do you know what? That sounds so relevant for your actual job position as well, because as a commissioning engineer, you are, required to work on a particular part and exp be able to know and explain exactly what's going on here and why
Yeah,
you're adding this here, and that's how this is
yeah,
going to affect here. So STAR is almost the verbal way of doing that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that makes complete sense as to. And I'm just going to ask you two more questions, Steve. These are just not in any order now. There's just things that I wanted to ask you is on my mind, if that's
No
okay
worries.
to ask. Has there been a project that has been very challenging, and I suppose you got there in the end? Like, is there a project that sticks in your mind as one that was very tough troubleshooting?
Um, Probably one of the hardest ones I did was it wasn't a very hard project. To be fair, it's a very, very simple project. All I was doing was upgrading a building smoke detection system. So
Right.
removing base plates and smoke detectors that fit into these base plates through obsolescence. It's no longer supported, so needed basically completely upgrading. So not that difficult at all. until you actually went into the building. So this was a operations room, so
Yeah.
24/7 operations. Um, Although the ceiling was only probably, I think it was 2.5 meters high, it was a suspended ceiling, and then all the smoke
Right.
detectors were 7.5 meters above that
Right.
on the actual ceiling of the building. What made it even harder was within this void between the suspended ceiling and the top of the ceiling was all the air
Yeah.
conditioning, all the cable routes, um,
Yes.
all the all the walls in the building didn't just stop at the suspended ceiling; they went all the way to the roof. So
Ah.
each individual detector had to have individual scaffolding built to the detector. Um, but then we still
Oh.
had to keep walkways free. We had to keep fire escapes free. We had to keep the building running 24/7. Um, Logistically wise, it was just an absolute minefield.
Yeah, it
But this is
sounds very
where,
challenging.
yeah, but this is where it's, I said about bringing the donuts in. So
Yeah.
I had a scaffolding team who were busy on site doing other things and would build the scaffolding to a detector when they were free. Um, you know, First day, box of donuts. Oh, great, cheers. But then it's like I'd get a phone call. Oh, Steve, we're free for an hour. Do you want us to build a scaffolding to a detector? Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
Just pick one,
nice.
build
Yeah.
it, off you go. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And I'd get that every day. We're free for two
Oh,
hours. We'll
wicked.
build
That's
another scaffolding for
amazing.
you.
Yeah.
We ended up bringing the project in. I think it was about 5 months ahead of schedule. I had 12 months to do the project because I think it was 27 detectors around the ceiling. I brought it in 5 months ahead of schedule with all the detectors upgraded, but purely because the
Oh,
scaffolding
amazing.
team, they we had that relationship that it was like, Steve wants another scaffolding built. We'll get in there, we'll get it done, and get out. And it was purely because of them we were able to do it and bring it in on time. And that's where those relationships are so important because as a commissioning engineer, you're always you're waiting on people to finish their job before you can actually do yours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if if they're invested in wanting to get that job done so you can crack on with yours, that
Mm.
process suddenly becomes a lot shorter, and then you're bringing projects in on time or ahead of schedule.
Yeah. It shows it's extremely valuable to just to be nice to people and hope it's
Yeah,
reciprocated in a job where you're
yeah,
going to be in each other's way sometimes. So yeah,
exactly.
that's well nice to hear. And last question, Steve. I finish all of my podcasts at the moment like this. What are you excited for next?
So I've just accepted a new role, um, and it's a bit of a it's a bit of a move for me because I've always worked for people, so always been PAYE, um,
Hmm.
you know, and this new role I'm now as my own company, so I'll be
Nice.
working as my own company. So the challenges that come in with that, managing accounts and all this sort of stuff, you know, it's going to be really interesting. The role's really interesting, and I'm really excited to sort of see how that pans out and hopefully works out.
Yes. Well, very good luck, Steve. I hope it does all go well. And obviously, as you are now, technically, you're your own company, so you'll be a contractor for these guys. Whenever you need some more work or you're looking for work, definitely let me know, and I'll
I
tell you
will
what we
do,
have available at the time. Yeah.
will do.
But thank you very much for your time, Steve, and we'll definitely speak again soon. But thank you today. I know we had to go over two different meetings. I appreciate you being
It's
acceptive
absolutely
of
fine.
that. Appreciate that. All right, have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the weather. Have you got this?